How's it going, guys? So, let's talk about the upcoming fight between Gennady Golovkin and Kell Brook for the middleweight titles. I've been watching all the footage I can find of both guys, any fight that I can find on YouTube or anywhere else, and I've been just analysing the styles and trying to think about how this fight's gonna go because I know that the majority of people are, pretty one-sided with this one. Everybody seems to think that this is an easy fight for Triple G. Now, now, what intrigues me about this fight is the fact that Gennady Golovkin is going to be facing a guy who, in my opinion, fights in the pocket extremely well. That's one thing that I think is very underrated about Kell Brook is that he can stand on the inside, he can have his hands down, and he can bend at the waist. And he's very, very difficult to deal with in the pocket. He can shorten up his punches, and he can get the right amount of leverage on his punches on the inside to really do a lot of damage. And I've been watching a lot of Kell Brook's fights, and to me, it really, really surprises me how underrated this guy is. Okay, he's a very, very good fighter, and I'm seeing all these comments from people saying that the fight's murder. In fact, what's funny is I checked out a video today. It was a video of one of Kell Brook's fights about 9 years ago. It was a long time ago. This fight. It was very early on in his career where Kell Brook got knocked down by some journeyman, and he got caught with a punch he didn't see coming. I believe it was an uppercut, and he just touched the canvas and then shot straight back up. And those people in the comment section of the video saying, "Oh, this proves that Kell Brook is gonna get knocked out, man." And do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when people were saying that Tyson Fury had no chance against Klitschko because he was knocked down by Nevin Pajcek about 5 years ago, something like that. So, you can never really judge a fighter on something that happened so many years ago. I mean, look at Andre Ward, for example, when he fought Darnell Boone and he was knocked down. And people used that for years and years. I remember a lot of Carl Froch fans telling me that, oh, Darnell Boone was able to knock down Ward. So what do you think Froch is going to do to him if he lands a shot like that? What I was saying is basically, look, that was a long time ago. Okay, Andre Ward was younger. He was less experienced. He obviously didn't have the defense or the experience or the ring craft that he has now. So back then it's like more likely that he would get caught with a big shot rather than nowadays. And I remember before that fight, I was just telling people, look, I wouldn't really think too much of it because obviously after every fight, fighters make adjustments. Okay, if you get knocked down in a fight, you go back to the drawing board and you take a look at the film and you see what punch you got caught with and why you got caught with it, and you make adjustments. Okay, very intelligent, skilled fighters do that. Okay, and Kell Brook hasn't been on the canvas since, neither has Andre Ward. So, you know, fighters do make adjustments. All right, when I see a fighter get knocked down, I don't think immediately that, oh, that means he's got a weak chin, or that means that because this next opponent punches harder, that means it's going to be a disaster. No, I mean, this is very different to the situation surrounding Amir Khan, because Amir Khan has been on the canvas time and time again in his career, all through his career. Okay, he's been on the canvas over 10 times. Okay, so you know, in Amir Khan's case, it's very different. It's very different when you've been getting hit and going to the canvas consistently throughout your career. That then becomes a problem because then it's a recurring theme, and then it means you're not really learning from your mistakes. But in regards to Kell Brook, it's not an issue because Kell Brook, he made the adjustments he needed to make. Okay, since that fight, he's fought much bigger punches than that guy, and he hasn't been on the canvas since. So, I wouldn't really look at that fight from 9 years ago and think that means that Triple G's gonna knock him out. But anyway, let's talk about what kind of things can Kell Brook do. What can he bring to the table that previous Triple G opponents couldn't do? Well, let's think about it. Now, one of Triple G's more awkward performances, one of the fights where he had several issues and took a lot of punishment, was the Curtis Stevens fight. Now, Curtis Stevens was about 5'7". He was shorter than Golovkin. He had a shorter reach than Golovkin. But why he was able to, well, he wasn't really troubling Golovkin, but he was landing punches. Okay, his punches were hitting the target, and that's important because it shows that Golovkin, in certain situations can be hit. He does sometimes give up his defense to his opponent. Now, what Curtis Stevens did was he kept a tight guard. He stood in the pocket when he needed to, and he didn't run from Golovkin, because Gennady Golovkin, the way that he fights, he's kind of a hunter. He gets you hurt, he gets you on the run, and he gets you on the move, and he chases you down until you've got nowhere else to go, and then he takes you out methodically. It's very, very smart what he does. And I think Curtis Stevens realised that after he got knocked down in the second round. He realised that he couldn't do anything on his back foot. He was in a hole. He had to get in there, and he had to let his hands go, and he had to take the initiative. And that's exactly what he did. And as a result of that, he was able to have a certain amount of success in the fight, a lot more than most of Gennady Golovkin's opponents were. And I think Kell Brook needs to understand that. I think going into this fight, he needs to understand that he can't run from Golovkin. Okay, running and just staying on the outside is not gonna serve you well against Golovkin. Kell Brook's going to have to mix it up. He's going to have to take the initiative. And you know what? He has the ability to do that. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Kell Brook is very, very good in the pocket. Okay, he can put his hands down and he can bend at the waist, and he's got very good timing. And he's very, very good at shortening his punches and getting the right amount of leverage inside. And I think that is something that Kell Brook is certainly going to have to incorporate into this fight. He's certainly going to have to use his ability to fight in the pocket, because when Triple G's coming forward, as I said, Triple G's a hunter. He wants to hunt. He wants you moving away from him, trying to avoid his punishment, so that then he can wear you down mentally and get you into a position he needs to take you out. And so I've mentioned about the Curtis Stevens fight where he was able to land a lot of shots. Also the Kasim Uma fight. Kasim Uma was able to land a lot of punches on Triple G, and I know there was circumstances surrounding the fight which led to Triple G not being in his best of condition. I believe he had problems with his visa, something like that. He was stuck in the airport. I don't know. There was some issue surrounding the fight which hindered his preparation, and I believe he was a little bit tired going into the fight. So you can't really dwell too much on it, but nonetheless, the fight happened, and we learned some things from it about Triple G, because, as I said, Curtis Stevens and Kasim Uma both were the kind of fighters. They didn't run from Golovkin. Okay, they stood and they fought him, and they fought in the pocket, and they tried to take the initiative in the fight. And those are two fights where Golovkin took punishment. So yeah, Kell Brook, I think that being a welterweight and moving up, and a guy who is around about the same kind of dimensions as Golovkin, being the same size, same reach, similar height. I think that it could potentially work to Kell Brook's advantage, because he's gonna have to fight in the pocket. He's gonna have to give Golovkin something to keep him off. Okay, I mean, if you look at Golovkin's easiest fights in his career, the fights where he's had just no issues whatsoever, it's always guys that have been taller and have tried to box on the outside. I mean, look at Martin Murray, for example. Martin Murray had a height and reach advantage. He had a weight advantage. He was a bigger guy. But that whole entire fight, Gennady Golovkin had Martin Murray on the back foot the whole fight. And Martin Murray's not a guy who runs, okay? He's a guy who stands and blocks punches. He relies on his forearms and his gloves to block the shots, and then likes to counter. And he likes to wear his opponents down. He's a very, very sort of compact, stationary fighter, Martin Murray. But being the taller guy and having the longer reach, he tried to have a back foot game against Triple G, and he tried to outbox him from the outside, and it just didn't work. He got walked down the whole fight. I mean, every single round of that fight was one-sided. I know that Martin Murray did last a lot longer than some of the other guys, but he just could not get anything going, because he was on the back foot, and because Golovkin was in his element. Okay, when you're trying to stay away from Golovkin and allowing him to take the initiative, that is exactly what he wants. Okay, you're just playing into his hands, and that's why I always say fighters like Erizandi Lara, these guys who just allow you to take the initiative and stay away and just try and do as little as possible, they got no chance against Triple G. Okay, against Triple G, you have to take the initiative. And yeah, as I said, Martin Murray just got completely walked down. He lasted a lot longer than most Triple G opponents, but that's only because he's very, very tough and has a lot of stamina and is very durable. Martin Murray's a very big, durable middleweight that has never been stopped before, prior to fighting Triple G or since. He's always gone the distance, and he's been in the ring with some pretty big punchers. I mean, he's been in with George Groves, Arthur Abraham, Nick Blackwell, Felix Sturm, Sergio Martinez. None of those guys were able to stop him. So, it doesn't really surprise me that he was able to last in the ring with Triple G later than most of his opponents. Now, I'm sure some of you are gonna say to me, isn't David Lemieux a fighter who fights in the pocket? Not really. David Lemieux to me, he's a guy, he's a pressure fighter, but he tends to do it from the outside. I mean, I haven't really seen David Lemieux stand in the pocket for any prolonged amount of time and shorten his punches and really outwork a guy inside. David Lemieux to me, he's a guy who's relying on his power. Now, the problem in that fight with Triple G is that David Lemieux, he was a short guy and a pressure fighter, but when he's on the outside, he doesn't really have great footwork to me, and he doesn't have great balance either. So a lot of the times he was lunging with his punches. When David Lemieux would throw a jab or when he would throw a straight right hand, he would lunge, and from lunging that means you're overextending, and then you're allowing a fighter like Triple G, who had the height and reach advantage in that fight, you're allowing him to capitalize on you lunging, because when you lunge, you're not defending yourself. I mean, it's absolutely impossible for a shorter fighter to overextend and defend themselves at the same time, or it's at least extremely difficult. Okay, you have to have some kind of balance. All right, if you don't, then you're just gonna get countered all night, and that's what happened in the Lemieux fight. So yeah, um, but to me, look, Kell Brook to me is a very very different kind of fighter than Lemieux. As I said, Lemieux is a pressure fighter who is relying on power, who's relying on a big stocky build and trying to wind up his punches and trying to just lunge in and go for the knockout. But Kell Brook to me is far more tactful than Lemieux, and let's not forget Kell Brook to me, he's a little bit taller than David Lemieux was. I think he's about the same height as Triple G. I mean, from all the photos that I've seen, all the press conferences, all the videos of them together, the face-offs, Kell Brook, to me, he's at least as tall as Triple G, maybe a slight quarter of an inch short or something like that. I mean, according to the BoxRec stats, Triple G is about 2.5 inches taller, but from what I've seen, he doesn't look taller at all. They look about the same to me. In terms of reach, I do believe that Triple G does have a reach advantage. Will that be significant in this fight? I don't know. I honestly don't, because, like I said, using your reach advantage against a fighter like Lemieux, who's lunging and who's relying on his power and being able to wind up on shots, that's very, very different to using your reach against a smart, intelligent counterpuncher who can fight in the pocket like Kell Brook. Kell Brook is a very, very smart fighter, guys. So one thing I will say is that Golovkin, he's certainly going to have to take this fight seriously, and I believe he is taking it seriously. From what I've heard in the interviews, he seems to believe that Kell Brook is his most difficult fight yet. That's at least what he's been saying in his interviews, and Triple G doesn't seem to me like the kind of guy to exaggerate. He doesn't seem to me like the kind of guy to really blow up his opponent and start telling lies. No, I generally believe that Triple G is somewhat concerned. I mean, before, when he was supposed to fight, Chris Eubank Jr., Triple G looked so relaxed. He didn't look concerned at all. From what he was saying, and from what Abel Sanchez was saying, it was as if they were very confident about that fight. They had no issues going into that fight at all. Very confident. But for this fight, to me, they don't seem concerned, but they seem prepared. They seem as if they know they're in for a difficult fight, and they obviously know that Kell Brook ain't going to be easy, especially not in the UK. So yeah, it's good to know that Golovkin is taking the fight seriously. Brook seems to be taking it very seriously too, as you'd expect. But at the same time, Kell Brook to me looks calm. He looks confident. He looks like he generally believes in himself. Some people would say that that's just stupidity. That he just. A lot of people are saying that Kell Brook isn't that intelligent and he believes he can win because he just doesn't understand how good Triple G is. I don't think that's true. I think that Kell Brook knows how good Triple G is, and I think that he knows this is his career-defining fight. It's going to be a very, very big fight for him and a very big opportunity, and he knows that and he understands that. So yeah, it's good to know that we've got two guys here who are very motivated and very prepared. So we're in for a great fight. And as far as what does Triple G need to do to win this fight, now what Triple G needs to do is he needs to hold the center of the ring. That's very important here, that Triple G holds the center of the ring and does not allow Kell Brook to push him onto the back foot, because Kell Brook, whereas Kell Brook will move around and he will box. As I said earlier in the video, Kell Brook's gonna want to get into the pocket and he's gonna want to take the initiative. So Gennady Golovkin needs to make sure that he's not getting backed up, because being in the UK with judges that are almost certainly going to be looking for any reason they can to give the rounds to Brook, Golovkin's going to need to assert himself, and he'll need to make it clear that he is in control of the ring generalship and he's not the one that's getting backed up and stuff like that. He needs to be the man in the ring, basically, and how he's going to do that is obviously the jab is going to be key. Gennady Golovkin has a beautiful jab. When he uses it to the max, it is one of the best jabs in boxing. It reminds me of Vladimir Klitschko's jab. How Vladimir Klitschko, once he starts landing his jab with regularity, you just can't do nothing. You can't get past it. It just becomes a weapon. It busts up your face, and it really, really controls and dictates the pace of the fight. And the jab is going to be very important for Triple G, especially if he does have a reach advantage, which I think he probably does. I think he has a slight reach advantage. So, whereas the jab worked very well against David Lemieux, he's going to have to make it work here, but it's going to be more difficult because, as I said, Kell Brook is a much better fighter than David Lemieux, in my opinion. He's much more technically gifted than David Lemieux. He has much better defense, much better upper body movement. And Triple G, to land his jab, he's going to have to be smart about it. He's going to have to use feints, and he's going to have to set it up properly. So, yeah, he's going to have to take the center of the ring. He has to make his jab count. He has to be the guy that's in control. He doesn't want to be getting backed up. And at the same time, he has to go to the body, because Kell Brook has pretty quick feet and can move very well in the ring. So Triple G needs to be landing left hands to the body. He needs to be slowing Kell Brook down a little bit, and he needs to make sure that it's all about ring presence. It's all about dominance. Like, for example, when Sergey Kovalev fought Bernard Hopkins, the real thing that won Sergey Kovalev that fight was his presence in the ring. He asserted himself very early on, took the center of the ring, fired out that little jab to the body, and kept Bernard Hopkins at bay. Landed his right hand at the end of the first round and put him down. And then from the rest of the fight, he held the center of the ring. He was the ring general. He was the guy dictating everything. And that is what Gennady Golovkin has to be in this fight, particularly since he's in Kell Brook's backyard. The crowd are going to be screaming for Kell Brook. Every single thing that Kell Brook does is going to be cheered. Gennady has to take that away, and he needs to upset the crowd and let the crowd know, as well as the fans, who's the boss in there, who's the guy who's in charge, who's the guy who's dictating the whole pace of the fight. He needs to make sure that everybody in that arena, everybody watching, knows that it's him. And as I said, holding the center of the ring is key to that. And of course, the body punching is key to that too, because the body punching is slowing down your opponent's feet so that you can have them in a position that you want them. And I believe Triple G has more than enough capability to do that. And it takes me back a little bit to the Willie Monroe Jr. fight, where, again, in that fight, for every single second, every single moment of that fight, you just knew who the boss was. Because even though Monroe was boxing really well and was countering really well, Gennady Golovkin had him on the back foot the whole fight. He had him up against the ropes. Gennady was holding the center of the ring, was cutting off the ring, and was beautifully controlling the pace of the fight. So it didn't matter what Willie Monroe Jr. tried to do. You knew who was in charge. Triple G, the guy in the center of the ring, the guy who is pressuring you and who's keeping himself asserted into the fight, who's keeping you where he wants you to be. He is the man in charge. You knew he was winning the rounds. And Kell Brook, can Kell Brook deal with that? Can he deal with a guy that's so commanding in the ring and just so good at just dictating things in the ring? Can Kell Brook deal with it? We don't know, because we haven't seen him in with a fighter of anywhere near Triple G's caliber. So, this is his time to prove himself. To all the people criticizing this fight, to all the people who are saying it's a shit fight and that Kell Brook doesn't have a chance, please tell me who else on Triple G's record can fight in the pocket as good as Kell Brook. Who else on Triple G's record has the kind of hand speed that Kell Brook has? Okay, who is there? So already that's two things there: being able to fight in the pocket and having a hand speed advantage. That's two things that are at a higher level than anything Triple G has ever fought before. I mean, don't get me wrong. Look, I wanted to see the Eubank fight. I wanted to see the Saunders fight. Those are fights I wanted to see, and they're fights I still want to see. But it's not Triple G's fault if these guys won't get in the ring, okay? I mean, who else would you have rather seen him fight than Brook? Who else? I mean, because those guys I just mentioned, Canelo, Eubank, and Saunders, and Jacobs too, they don't want to fight Triple G, okay? Jacobs is having the long-awaited, most anticipated rematch of all time with the great Sergio Mora, the fight everybody wants to see. So Triple G, with that blockbuster coming up, Triple G can't get this guy in the ring. I mean, Danny Jacobs he's just too big a draw. He needs 10 million. Triple G can't find 10 million to pay this guy, so that fight ain't gonna happen. So I'm not gonna complain about it. Yeah, and Billy Joe Saunders, he wants 5, 8 million, whatever he's been asking for. He changes it every time, but 4 million wasn't enough for him. As far as Eubank Jr., he wants control of everything. Okay, he wants the fight in his backyard. He wants control over the ticket sales, the pay-per-view money, everything. He wants everything. His dad, that is, wants everything under their control. So yeah, basically these guys, they have all these demands because they don't want to fight Triple G unless they get a retirement package. So I'm not gonna lose any sleep over those guys not fighting him. Okay, I would rather Triple G fight whoever is most available to fight, and Kell Brook is that guy. So who else could he have fought? Tell me, who else would you guys rather Triple G fought on this date? Okay, would you have rather he fought Erislandy Lara in a leisure center somewhere in America, which would Erislandy Lara doesn't have any fans except for the LGBT on YouTube. They're the only fan base that Erislandy Lara has, and they don't pay to see his fights, so they don't even count. This is a dude that has to give away tickets to even sell out an arena. So, I'm not interested in Lara. And Thunderdome Boxing Talk, shout out to him. He already exposed Erislandy Lara. Okay, go and check his last video out. He exposed the absolute BS coming from Lara and his team. Okay, Lara don't want to fight Triple G. He'll never fight Triple G unless he gets a retirement package, which he doesn't deserve because he's not a draw. And Triple G is. So yeah, just tell me, who would you rather he fought? Okay, who at 160 or at 154 that is available to fight and that will fight him? Who would you rather Triple G fought? Please tell me, because I know you guys say that he only fights bums, but I just want to know who is the alternative? Who do you guys want him to fight? Okay, who else is out there? Just let me know. But yeah, I'm rambling here about stuff that's just totally irrelevant. I should be talking about the Brook fight. Yeah. Who do I think is going to win this fight? Now, I do think Triple G is going to win. Don't get me wrong. I know I'm sounding as if I'm kind of on the fence here. I'm not on the fence. I do think Triple G is going to win because I think that Triple G, and it's nothing to do with weight, it's nothing to do with size, it's nothing to do with any of that. It's just to do with Triple G, to me, being the slightly more refined boxer and having the more experience. I think Triple G has fought the better opposition out of these two. Because Triple G's been in the ring with guys like Daniel Geale, who are elite level fighters. If you put the Cotto fight aside, because when Daniel Geale fought Cotto, he was a shell of himself. He was coming off that traumatic knockout against Triple G, and he was weight drained. Okay, that was a fucking it was a shady 3-weight catch weight. It was ridiculous. A 3-pound catch weight. I mean. And the guy looked like a fucking skeleton, so I don't even count that fight. But yeah, Daniel Geale was a 2-time world champion, a road warrior, a guy that had won belts on the road, a guy whose only defeats were highly controversial decisions. I don't think that Kell Brook has ever fought anybody of his caliber. So you have to give this to Triple G based on experience, based on the fact that he has more momentum at the moment. He's had the bigger victories, the bigger events. And I just think that if he's able to hold the center of the ring, and if he's able to get to the body, and if he's able to land his jab with any kind of regularity, he should get Kell Brook into a position he needs him in, and then he should stop him, I think. So I'm going to go with Triple G by probably a late stoppage. A decision wouldn't surprise me, but I'm gonna go with Triple G by stoppage. And another thing, Kell Brook saying he wants to get the knockout in this fight, but it's a big ask because although Kell Brook is a knockout artist, the problem is Triple G has never even hit the canvas before in what 400 amateur fights, fucking 35 professional fights, multiple back-to-back world title fights where he scored all the knockouts and he hasn't even hit the canvas once. You have to assume that either he has great defense or he has a great chin or both, and it's probably both. So it's a hard ask to ask Kell Brook to get the stoppage here. So yeah, I don't think Kell Brook will stop Triple G. Don't see it happening unless you get like one of these classic premature stoppages that I have seen in the UK numerous times. So you never know. But I'm gonna go with Triple G, probably a late stoppage. I don't think it'll be early. I don't think it'll be in the first half of the fight. The second half of the fight, late stoppage for Triple G. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching.